My wife cheated with her boss, and now he's claiming $200K in property settlement. Turns out she's been secretly draining our joint account to fund her affair and lawyer fees. And I just found out she's been planning to claim our house and savings as hers in court. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a lying, cheating bitch. Honestly, I thought we had a solid marriage. We'd been together for 8 years, and I genuinely believed we were in it for the long haul. She was the kind of woman who always looked like she had everything under control, confident, smart, a little bitchy sometimes, but I liked that about her. She knew what she wanted and she went after it, or so I thought. It all started about 2 months ago. Lisa started acting weird, more distant than usual. She'd come home late from work, and I'd notice her phone buzzing constantly, always hiding it when I walked into the room. She'd brush it off, say she was talking to a client or some, but I knew better. I could feel it in the way she avoided eye contact, the way she'd scramble to delete messages or change the subject when I asked about her day. I'd find her texting late at night, sometimes in the bathroom, sometimes in bed with her phone tucked under her pillow. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I was starting to get suspicious. Women don't usually hide their phones like that unless there's something they don't want you to see. I kept quiet for a while, watching, waiting. I didn't want to accuse her without proof. But then I started noticing small things. Her phone bill had strange numbers and her bank account activity was odd too. Little deposits, small cash withdrawals she claimed she needed for emergencies or shopping. But her stories didn't add up. One day I decided to check our joint bank account. I figured if she was draining money for some affair, I'd catch her in the act. And sure enough, I found it. Multiple small transfers, 200 here, $300 there, going to some account I didn't recognize. I looked up the account number and it was linked to a lawyer's office. My stomach sank. She was paying someone, probably a lawyer or maybe her boss, as I later found out. That's when I started digging deeper. I pulled up her phone records and there it was, texts back and forth with her boss, Mark. They weren't just professional messages, they were flirty, suggestive. Things like "can't wait to see you tonight" and "you're the only one who makes me feel alive." I saw pictures she sent him, seductive, provocative. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I loved, was screwing her boss behind my back. And she was so brazen about it, like she thought she was invincible. The worst part, I found out she'd been secretly draining our joint savings account to fund her affair and lawyer fees. She'd been lying to me for months, pretending everything was fine while she was planning her escape, her new life with Mark. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, like the ground had opened up beneath me. How could she do this? How could she betray me, our marriage, all for some stupid sex and some guy who probably saw her as just a conquest? I remember the exact moment I confronted her. I had all the evidence laid out on my phone, her texts, bank statements, everything. I waited until she came home from work that evening. I was furious, trembling with rage, but I kept my voice calm, at least on the surface. I told her I knew everything. She looked at me, eyes wide, and then she started lying. Of course she did. Said it was just flirty banter, that Mark was just a work friend, and that I was overreacting. She called me paranoid, said I was jealous and insecure, that she loved me but she needed excitement and Mark was just a distraction. I couldn't believe her lies. She's always been good at lying, at spinning stories, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I felt a boiling mixture of shock, anger, and sadness. All those years, all that trust, and it was gone in an instant. I looked at her, and for the first time I saw her not as my wife but as someone I didn't recognize. She was a stranger to me now, someone who'd betrayed everything we had built together for a quick sex affair and greed. In that moment, I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. But now I knew the truth. The woman I loved was a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and I had to decide what to do next. My mind was racing. Should I fight for her or should I cut her loose and move on? The pain was sharp, but underneath it all, there was a flicker of clarity. She had crossed a line and I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without consequences. After I confronted Lisa that night, her reaction only confirmed everything I'd suspected. She started crying, of course, mascara streaming down her face, saying she was sorry, that she didn't mean for it to happen, that Mark was just some stupid mistake. She insisted they only had sex a couple of times, that it was just a fling, and that she still loved me. But the way she said it, I knew she was lying. She looked at me with those manipulative eyes, trying to make me doubt myself, trying to make me feel guilty for catching her. I sat there hearing her sob stories, but inside I was boiling. I wasn't buying her tears or her excuses. I knew she'd been planning this for months, draining our savings, paying lawyers, sneaking around behind my back. The worst part, she'd been so good at hiding it, I almost didn't want to believe it myself. But the evidence was undeniable. I felt betrayed, humiliated, like I'd been punched in the stomach repeatedly. The next few days were a blur. I spent most of my time going over everything: her texts, bank statements, the few times I caught her lying outright. I kept asking myself how she could do this to me, to us. I'd been loyal, working my ass off to provide for our little family, and she was out there screwing her boss and secretly draining our account. I felt sick every time I thought about the money she'd stolen, our savings, our plans for the future. All gone, spent on her affair and lawyer fees. She kept denying she was planning to leave, but I didn't believe her. The way she avoided talking about the future, the way she was constantly on her phone texting Mark when she thought I wasn't looking, she was planning her escape. I found out she'd already hired a lawyer, and she was claiming the house and our savings as hers. She'd been talking to her lawyer behind my back, trying to figure out how to take everything I had worked for. That was the moment I realized she was serious about leaving me with nothing. I started to think about what I needed to do. I couldn't let her get away with this. I wasn't going to be some sucker who got played and left broke. I decided I had to fight back, but not just emotionally. I needed to do something that would really hurt her where it mattered. I wasn't just going to sit around and let her take everything. I started planning my next moves carefully. First, I reached out to a lawyer I knew from work, a guy who handled property disputes and divorce cases. I wanted to understand my rights, what she could legally claim, and what I could do to protect myself. Turns out, she was trying to pull a fast one, claiming the house as her own, even though it was in both our names. I also found out that her plan was to drain the joint account completely before I even got a chance to contest it. That's when I knew I had to act fast. I started monitoring her bank transactions more closely and even hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her. I wanted to know if she was meeting Mark or any other guys, and whether she was really planning to leave or just trying to scare me into giving her what she wanted. The pie confirmed my suspicions. She was meeting Mark secretly, and they were planning to run off together once she got her hands on the house and the money. The bastard was even helping her hide some of the funds, I think. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, pretending to be the loving wife, saying she was trying to make this work, even though I knew better. She accused me of being paranoid, say I was overreacting, that I was jealous of her success, and that I didn't trust her. She played the victim, but I saw through her. She was cold, manipulative, and completely selfish. She didn't care about the damage she was doing to us, only about how much she could get away with. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I was furious that she could betray me like this, that she could drain our life savings, cheat on me, and then turn around and lie about everything. I was furious at myself for not noticing the signs earlier, for trusting her so blindly. But I also knew I had to do something to protect what was mine. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, our house, our savings, our future, not without a fight. So I started gathering everything: screenshots of her texts, bank statements, the lawyer's emails, everything I could use in court. I also started documenting her meetings with Mark, just in case I needed proof of her infidelity. My plan was to get a good lawyer, fight her claim on the house, and make sure she paid for her betrayal. I wasn't just angry, I was determined. This wasn't going to end with her taking everything I worked for. I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. Over the next couple of weeks, things started escalating fast. I was trying to keep my cool, but inside I was furious and hurt. Every time I thought about her sneaking around with Mark, I felt like I was choking. I had never felt so betrayed in my life. I worked hard to build a life, with her, and she just threw it all away for some affair and greed. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her plans went. One night, I caught her red-handed. I was doing some late-night digging through her phone, trying to find any new evidence, and I saw a message from Mark that made my blood boil. It was a photo, her in bed, half-naked, with a caption, "Can't wait to see you again tonight." She was stupid enough to send that to him, thinking she was clever. I stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak. That was the moment I knew I had to act decisively. The next morning, I confronted her again. I told her I knew about the photo, about the money she'd been siphoning off, about her plans to leave. Her face went white. She tried to deny everything, said it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just a work friend, that she didn't mean for it to go this far. She was so good at lying, I almost believed her, almost. But I'd seen enough. I told her she was done, that I was filing for divorce, and that I was going to fight her for everything she was trying to steal. She started crying again, blaming me for everything, said I was controlling, paranoid, insecure, that I didn't trust her, that she was just trying to find herself. It was classic gaslighting. She told me I was overreacting, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She swore she loved me, that she'd never cheat, that she was just stressed at work. But I knew better. I knew the truth. She'd been planning her escape for months, draining our joint account, cheating behind my back, and now she was desperate to cover her tracks. I decided to take immediate action. I contacted my lawyer, who told me to freeze the joint bank account and start building a case. I also filed for an emergency protection order, just in case she tried to do something irrational. I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her movements. If she was meeting Mark or any other guys, I wanted proof. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, pretending to be the innocent wife. She told her friends she was trying to fix things, that I was just overreacting, that everything would be okay. But I could see through her lies. She was panicked, desperate to hold on to her new life, her new lover, and the money she'd been secretly stealing. She was banking on me being too emotional or too trusting to fight back. That was her biggest mistake. One day, I found out she'd been secretly talking to her lawyer, trying to get a court order to claim the house and our savings. The lawyer she hired was aggressive, pushing hard to get everything in her favor. They were trying to spin a story that I was abusive and unfit, just to sway the judge. But I had evidence, screenshots, bank statements, her own words. I knew I had a strong case. I wasn't just fighting for my property. I was fighting for my dignity and my future. That's when I realized she was not just a cheating wife. She was a con artist and a manipulator. She lied, cheated, drained our account, and now she was trying to take the house I worked so hard for. I felt sick thinking about how close I'd come to losing everything. But I also felt a renewed sense of resolve. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. I started putting my plan into motion. I worked with my lawyer to prepare a counterclaim to protect the house and our savings. I also hired a forensic accountant to trace every penny she'd drained from our joint account, and I discovered she'd spent thousands on her affair, lawyer fees, and even some luxury shopping she hid from me. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I wasn't just losing money. I was losing my trust, my marriage, my sense of stability. But I refused to let her win. I was ready to take her to court and fight for my rights. The court date was set surprisingly fast, considering how tangled everything was. I spent days gathering every piece of evidence I could find: text conversations, bank transactions, her lawyer's emails, even her secret meetings with Mark. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case, because I knew Lisa was going to come in swinging, trying to spin her story and claim that I was the bad guy. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate the court or turn this into some kind of sympathy story. On the day of the hearing, I was nervous but determined. I sat there, staring at the courtroom door, feeling like I was about to face a judge and jury that would decide whether I lost everything. Lisa was there too, dressed to impress, with her lawyer smirking confidently. She tried to act innocent, like she was the victim here, but I saw right through her. She was a master at playing the victim, but I knew her game. The judge asked us to present our cases. My lawyer laid out everything, proof of her affair, her attempts to drain our savings, her claims to the house, and her manipulative tactics. I presented my evidence, making sure every detail was clear. Her secret texts, her bank withdrawals, her meeting with Mark caught on camera. I explained how she'd been planning to leave me, how she'd been using me, and how she'd tried to take everything I'd worked for. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that I was controlling, that Lisa was just seeking happiness, and that she deserved to claim her share of the assets because she'd contributed to the marriage. But I had documentation showing she'd been secretly draining our joint account for months, money that I thought was going toward household expenses or savings. Instead, it was fueling her affair and lawyer fees. I also about her lies, her manipulations, and her efforts to spin the story in her favor. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, looking at the evidence. I could feel my heart pounding, knowing this could go either way. But I'd done my homework. I knew I had a strong case. When it was Lisa's turn, she tried to deny everything, claiming she was misunderstood, that her affair was just a mistake, and that I was jealous and paranoid. She even had the nerve to say she still loved me and wanted to save our marriage. Total bullshit. I knew her game. She was just trying to save herself. After hours of testimonies and presentations, the judge finally made a ruling. It was a relief, but also bittersweet. The court ordered Lisa to return the money she drained from our joint account, about $20, $0, and declared that the house would remain in my name. Because I'd proved I was the legal owner. The judge also dismissed her claim to the property, citing her misconduct and breach of trust. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I'd fought hard and I'd won some semblance of justice. But even with the court's decision, the emotional damage was done. I felt exhausted, drained, and more hurt than I'd ever been. Lisa sat there, silent, knowing she'd lost the legal battle but still trying to spin her story. I looked at her with a mixture of anger and disappointment. I realized that no matter what the court said, she'd already betrayed me in the worst way possible. Still, I knew I had to move forward. The aftermath was rough. I started the process of separating everything, selling the house, dividing what was left of our savings, and figuring out how to rebuild my life from the wreckage. I couldn't help but feel broken, but I also felt a sense of relief that I'd stood up for myself. I'd fought for what was right, and I'd managed to keep some of what was mine. It was a small victory, but it meant everything in that moment. Looking back, I realize how much this experience changed me. I learned to trust my instincts, to be more cautious with who I let into my life. I also learned that some people, especially those who seem confident and manipulative, are capable of doing terrible things for their own gain. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Never ignore the signs of betrayal and never be afraid to fight for what's yours. Because in the end, nobody's coming to save you. Sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. The months that followed the court ruling were probably the hardest of my life. I had fought so hard to keep what was mine, our house, our savings, and I'd managed to stop her from claiming everything outright. But at what cost? I felt hollow, like I'd been gutted from the inside out. Every day was a reminder of what she'd done, how she'd betrayed me, and how much trust we'd lost. I was angry, devastated, and honestly pretty damn lost. She moved out shortly after the court decision, taking what little she could from the house, some clothes, a few personal items, and the rest of her lawyer fees. I stayed behind, managing the mess she left behind. The house now felt cold, empty, like a shell of the life we'd once shared. I kept thinking about all those nights she spent with Mark, how she'd lied so effortlessly. It made me sick. I couldn't believe I'd loved someone capable of such deception. Financially, I was drained. All the savings she hadn't spent on her affair or lawyer fees was gone. I had to start over, scrimping and saving just to stay afloat. I got a new job, worked overtime, and slowly started rebuilding. But the emotional scars were still fresh. I trusted her, loved her, and she'd thrown it all away for sex and greed. Part of me wondered if I'd ever really recover from this. One thing I did learn from all this: trust is a fragile thing. Once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to fix. I also learned that some people will do anything to get what they want, even if it means destroying someone they supposedly love. Lisa was a perfect example. She lied, cheated, drained our joint account, and then had the nerve to act innocent when I found out. I realized I'd been blind for too long, ignoring the signs because I wanted to believe she was the woman I married. I started seeing a therapist, trying to process what had happened. It helped to talk through my feelings, anger, betrayal, sadness, and to understand that this wasn't my fault. I kept telling myself that I did everything I could, that I fought for what was rightfully mine. But the pain still lingered. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about her and Mark, and feeling this deep, aching sense of loss. As time went on, I focused on rebuilding my life. I cut out toxic people, stayed away from social media triggers, and poured my energy into my work and my friends. Slowly, I started to feel like I had control again. I realized that I didn't need her to define me or my future. I was capable of starting over even after such a brutal betrayal. It wasn't easy, but I refused to let her win entirely. Looking back, I can see how much I've grown. I've become more cautious, more aware of the signs of manipulation, and more determined to protect myself. I still get angry sometimes, especially when I think about the money she stole or the trust she shattered, but I also feel a strange sense of relief. I'm finally free from her lies, her betrayal, her manipulations. I've taken back control of my life, and I'm slowly rebuilding what she tried to destroy. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags, no matter how much you want to believe in the best. Be prepared to fight for yourself, because sometimes that's all you have. And never forget, you're stronger than you think. Even when everything falls apart, you can pick up the pieces and start over. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, you owe it to yourself to be happy and to never let someone else's betrayal define your future. Now, looking back, I realized that the worst part wasn't just losing the money or the house, though that hurt like hell. It was losing the person I thought I knew. For years, I believed we had something real, something worth fighting for. But the truth was, Lisa was never the person I thought she was. She was manipulative, selfish, and willing to destroy everything we built just for sex and money. That realization hit me hard, and honestly, it changed how I see relationships now. I've come to understand that betrayal cuts deep, and healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process of rebuilding trust in myself and learning to recognize the signs of deception early. I've also learned that sometimes, the only way to protect yourself is to cut out the toxic people who don't have your best interests at heart. Trust is earned, and if someone shows you they're untrustworthy, it's better to walk away than to keep hoping they'll change. This experience has made me more cautious, but it's also made me stronger. I've learned to value myself more, to set boundaries, and to never ignore that little voice inside that warns you when something's off. Because at the end of the day, nobody is coming to save you from betrayal. Sometimes, you have to be your own hero. I don't hate her, but I do feel a lot of anger. Not just at her, but at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. But I also forgive myself for being naive. We all want to believe in the best, in people, especially the ones we love. The important thing is that I've learned from it. I've grown stronger, more resilient, and more aware of what I deserve. So if you're reading this and going through your own nightmare, just know you're not alone. It hurts like hell, and it's okay to feel broken for a while. But don't stay down. Pick yourself up, learn from the pain, and keep moving forward. Life is too short to waste on people who don't truly value you. Trust yourself, protect your heart, and remember that eventually, the pain will lessen. You're stronger than you think, and someday, you'll look back and see how far you've come.